I realize because of who your promoters are that we'll never really be friends. But I also felt that there was a moment of affinity between us that made you a little remorseful and that remorse was sincere, at least momentarily. So I'm making a tape to help you understand, in light of that fact, that we're incompatible socially. Um, how the way they explain what they've done really plays. And of course, you'll have to laugh at my words and you'll have to shrug them off and you'll have to join in pointing fingers and saying, isn't that a ridiculous person? But somewhere, maybe in your heart, you'll realize I'm telling the truth. You see, when you speak out against true evil, you're targeted. It's inevitable. And it might seem superficially that for the rabid to be working with psychiatrists from Attica State Prison on an implant to make a child neuroobedient for organized pedophile trafficking by a university mob is a strange and irregular thing to be doing until you realize that they were behind it. So that's why they're accusing their victim. They accuse their victim because they were behind it, you see. And what happened, I'm 61 years old, is that I misunderstood them as having, when they set up Amnesty International as bait, come and tell us about how we tortured you and you'll be saved from those people who tortured you. And then they were in a position to attack me without anybody knowing about my confidences to the very people who tortured me. So, they have playback. I mean, they were making tapes of things that were Michael Reagan's favorite scenes when I was 9 years old, and then promoting them in songs and selling them to underworld vultures through Salt and Beast and so on. And they committed holocaustal acts against bystanders and remained very popular by their capabilities, European capabilities in media. So you'll see that there's all of this antithetical pseudo information from the drama clubs and the sets that don't represent the realities of what happened. They don't capture films that I know of Ronnie Gordy, Cartieri subjecting me to slaughtering blows to the head. Some of these people who did this going on to kill other people, they don't um, show the stalking on the streets. What they show is um, traumatic amnesia, alexithymia, the inability to describe, and people playing games with um, a 15-year-old, 14-year-old growing up and dislocated from another community. His mother absolutely devastated, trying to protect her while people were waving scissors and taunting him and threatening to cut off his hair. A lot of really horrible things. And some of them truly depraved acts, so depraved that my mind blanked out. I still have things I refuse to show anybody that they subjected me to that were terroristic and depraved, slaughtering violence. And of course, they networked with the social system that laughs at children being used abusively, traumatically for depraved acts by adults to promote themselves. So what ultimately happened was I managed to get myself, after about 50 years of trying, to the point where I could make tapes which actually showed what happened. I mean, I didn't know they'd used the neuroplasm. You can see it now, but it was in there, and they were using it for hypnotic control, neurohypnosis. Wesley Partsville laughingly bragged about using on a dissenter in the Pitt News because they had so effectively gyrated to humiliate and make me a laughing stock that that's what everybody said I was. And so they could brag openly about using a neurological implant You know, it's a laughing stock, period. That's all it is. And they claim that I did it to myself by uh, putting together a conspiracy theory. The information is perfectly clear. You know, they gave me a brochure that says there's no such thing as objective reality, only what the jury believes. They're playing a game with human belief, and they think that God will share the joke with them, you know, while they use it for genocide and remain popular by sleight of hand and lying and catcalling and saying, you know, he's trying to get money and stuff. You know, I'm entitled to damages. But that's the way that they did it, to disentitle me. And the reason they chose me was because my father had written a book in the 40s on human rights and then abandoned me. So they were like, well, this child has no rights, civil rights. Watch what the black people, we can get the black people to do to him. They damaged me and made me a laughing stock and tortured me and humiliated me and sexually violated me and castrated me and did all of these other things and acted like it was the learning tree. So they play these tapes of gyrations that they made by manipulating the psyche of a neurogolem who was in traumatic amnesia. And they call it playback, but it's very superficial. And what I eventually was able to do was get the truth on tapes. That's all. I've never succeeded in stopping them. I've never succeeded in getting anyone honest to admit they created an absolute monstrosity, that they committed a terrible, terrible crime nobody cares about. The media promotes crime so prolifically that crime just seems to be the normal course of affairs. I went out walking today, and of course, somebody interceded me on the sidewalk who wanted to fight me, and I tried to explain that I was deaf and I had to change directions and go another direction. It's the way the situation is on the street. They know that they're lying because they were the ones who tortured me. They were the ones who used an implant. It was in the papers that they tortured me. The rabid animal, Amanda Harcourt, actually knew, as I said in a preceding tape, that the person who lured me into the presence of men who took me hostage did it because they threatened to kill him. She knew that. She knew that I was kidnapped and that the person who lured me into being kidnapped was somebody who they had threatened to kill. Yet she pretended that it was just a kinship thing in the neighborhood, the hoodie getting acquainted with each other, like as though these people were Mick Jagger and I looked up to them or something like that. And this is the way that the Beatles have protected themselves from lying and poisoning a generation and being with Nixon's MK Ultra and the double Houdini Lennon pulled and the catastrophic hate crime that Yoko Ono targeted me for as a Tojo Ronin in a bizarre and vicious revenge attack from World War II. But my point is I eventually got the truth on tape, and you can see some of these tapes. It's not going to change anything. It's not going to make us be able to ever be friends or be together in any meaningful way. Because of your association with them, you'll never escape them. They're too vicious. I mean, they're murdering people who try to escape them. But they say that they represent the good, the holy, the true, and so on, yada, yada, yada. It's European bizarro fascism, the totality situation. I mean, they had a psychiatrist from Attica State Prison using a neurological implant on a 9-year-old so that adults could do despicably things to him of a sexually depraved direction to amuse Michael Reagan because when I later spoke out against the aggressive and hysterical fascism of his father. It's simple wheel. People who torture you get control, they maneuver to get control, and then obliterate you for dissent. You know, it happens in Russia, it happens in England, it happens in Pittsburgh. It's the way the operation of the new Confederacy of Alliances of the Council of Dictators dispels of any kind of fair witness about what they really did. So, you know, what happened was I had a lexatemia and a neurological implant, and self-image problems of a 15-year-old whose mother was in grief and despair, and they tortured me. I mean, that's what happened. They brutally tortured me. And the backup evidence has always been there. We talked about how I was a picky eater, carbonated beverages were too strong for me. None of this is going to have any impact on the rabid animals. It never has and never will.